Well, the full conquest of Gaza. An Israeli media report the Prime Minister will push for this strategy after 22 months of war. Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet with senior members of his security cabinet today. And senior officials close to him say, quote, "The die is cast, even though there is dissent among the ranks." A source says the defence establishment opposes an expansion of ground operations in areas where hostages are believed to be held. This all comes amid pressure and protests to end the war, including from the families of hostages who have warned against expanding a military campaign in Gaza. And take a look at this. The scene from Gaza on Monday captures the desperation of hundreds of Palestinians as humanitarian aid is airdropped into the enclave. Well, Hamas is demanding the dire humanitarian situation in the enclave be addressed before it returns to the stalled ceasefire and hostage release talks. The Israeli Prime Minister had this message on Monday.
We must continue to stand together and fight together to achieve all our war objectives, the defeat of the enemy, the release of our hostages, and the assurance that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel. Later this week, I will convene the cabinet to instruct the IDF on how to achieve these three objectives, all of them without exception.
CNN's Matthew Chance joins us now live from Jerusalem. Good to have you with us, Matthew. So, full occupation of Gaza is what the Israeli Prime Minister wants. We have heard widespread condemnation of this proposal. What sort of case is he going to make to his security cabinet?
Well, it's a good question, because that security cabinet may not be unanimous in supporting further military action in Gaza. And that cabinet meeting, or rather the small security forum that he'll be consulting with over the next few hours, we're expecting them to have some pretty intensive discussions about what exactly it is that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has in mind when it's floated out there from sources close to the Prime Minister's office that he wants to take over full control over the Gaza Strip. Currently, the Israeli military have operational control of about 75%, three quarters. There's another quarter which they don't have full operational control over. But it's that area of Gaza, around Gaza City and places in the centre of the Gaza Strip, where the majority of the 2 million residents of Gaza are located, and crucially, where it's believed the majority of the hostages, Israeli and other hostages that are still being held captive in Gaza are located. Remember, there are 20 hostages, it's believed by the Israeli authorities, who are still alive and being held inside the Gaza Strip. And so any kind of military operation to target those areas and to establish Israeli military control over them would have two major risks. One of them, the death of more Palestinian civilians, and we've already seen tens of thousands of people killed so far in the military campaign in Gaza. But also, it would crucially risk the lives of the hostages as well. There's a risk they could be executed by their captors, the risk they could be killed by kind of friendly fire. That's happened before as well in Gaza, as Israeli troops sort of sought out the locations where the hostages are being held. So it's an immensely risky strategy. It's also one that will be intensely unpopular among the vast majority of people in Israel, who are exhausted, overstretched, tired with the ongoing, incessant military campaign, which, as I say, has been underway really since the appalling attacks on Israelis in October the 7th in 2023. And so many people in this country, the majority of people in the country, they simply want this war to end, and they want their hostages back home.
Yeah, exactly. Matthew Chance for us. Good to have you on this story. Thanks so much. And we are going to stay on this. On Monday, hundreds of retired Israeli security officials signed a letter urging US President Donald Trump to increase pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister to end the war in Gaza. The former chief of Israel's internal security agency was among them. Ami Elon tells CNN that Israel's military goals have already been achieved.
Our message is that this war must end. And this is the only way that we can see a better future for Israel. This war started 2 years ago as a just war. It was the immediate result of a massacre and horror of Hamas. But after 12 months, we achieved all our military goals. Netanyahu is, acting against the will of the Israeli people. 70% of the Israeli people are demanding ending the war and bringing back all our hostages. We understand today that it is a total contradiction. We understand that our hostages are dying as a result of the continuation of this war.
Well, I want to welcome Nimrod Novik, the author of that letter, which was signed by some 600 Israeli officials. He's a former foreign policy advisor to the late Shimon Peres and a fellow with the Israel Policy Forum. He recently wrote an article in Time magazine about the major uptick of violence in the occupied West Bank. And he joins us now live. Great to have you with us. Appreciate your time. I want to start first with that letter. The Prime Minister Netanyahu, of course, is calling for a full takeover of Gaza, even in areas where hostages are being held. You wrote a letter signed by hundreds of security officials on all sides of politics, including former IDF generals, heads of Mossad, diplomatic leaders, essentially saying the war is dragging on for political reasons. Explain Netanyahu's objective and the reason for your letter.
The reason for the letter is that we believe that the Trump administration, on several occasions, managed to steer policy here in directions that we believe are in line with Israeli national security. Even before taking office, President Trump managed to get the Prime Minister to accept a ceasefire hostage deal in January, which he had rejected for months. The same goes for the war in Lebanon, where the Trump administration managed to forge a ceasefire. And we believe that the time has come for that administration to do the same in Gaza. There are all kinds of considerations as to why the Prime Minister issued the threat of conquering the whole Gaza Strip, occupying it. We are hopeful very much that this is intended in order to soften Hamas' position and bring about the ultimate deal that brings the hostages home. But with this government, nobody knows.
And speak to us, Nimrod, about Netanyahu's objectives, why you believe this war is continuing to drag on.
Well, I find myself, for a change, in the majority of Israelis, overwhelming majority of Israelis who, poll after poll, are not just against the continuation of the war and calling to end it and bring the hostages home, but when asked again in the polls, what drives the Prime Minister? Is it the national security considerations or personal political ones? And I never believed that I would live long enough to see the Israeli public considering a Prime Minister running the war primarily on the basis of his political and personal considerations. Most Israelis believe that the Prime Minister refused to risk his coalition. And given the fact that his coalition, that he chose to associate himself with the most extreme elements in Israeli society, from the margins of society, and they now hold the majority and can bring him down, that consideration of the durability of his tenure trumps national security considerations. This is an awful thought. I never thought that I will reach it, and I never thought I would utter it aloud. But when I thought so myself, it was one thing. When the overwhelming majority of the public thinks so, this is even more alarming.